At Chris Kehler Holistic, we demonstrate real healing and real caring to your health issues and needs. Our solution for you is an alternative to the alternative. Our out-of-the-box treatment methods are aimed to your specific well-being and are quite different than most. Venturing down the realm of quantum energy healing, Chris uses unique modalities of healing, such as spiritual intervention with pendulum dowsing, sacred geometry tools such as the neutralization, divinity, and sun ring. Another tool Chris uses is a 5-tiered pyramid affectionately known as the Silver Light Pyramid to activate quantum activity within the body. Also, Chris Kehler Holistic uses radionic technologies in various platforms with specific liquid mineral ionics to balance out excesses and deficiencies within the body. At Chris Kehler Holistic, our goal is to get tangible and measurable results in the least amount of time possible so you can carry on with what's important in your life. Another advantage to this unique energy healing is that it can be done at a distance healing session. So location is not a barrier and can be done conveniently at your home, office, just about anywhere through Skype or telephone conferencing. Eliminate costly protocols, expensive monthly supplements, high-priced allopathic operations, invasive surgeries, and dubious medication applications that keep you trapped in a financial and health rat race. Get a specific, customized, out-of-the-box solution tailored for your health recovery. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we are warm welcoming and want to put you at ease with your visit to us. Please visit www.chriskehler.net for further information as we welcome your questions and inquiries to starting this unique journey. At Chris Kehler Holistic, we want to show you that we are the alternative to the alternative and the out-of-the-box solution to customize an answer for you to spend less and gain more in your high vibrancy journey. Visit www.chriskehler.net. Real healing and real caring to your health needs.
I present to the world Mr. Chris Kehler.
I am your host of A Quantum View, Chris Kehler. Mr. Bob, how are you, sir?
I am unbelievably okay.
Unbelievably okay.
Well, unbelievably
you're not convincing
okay.
me, how are you?
No, well, we're getting ready for this move. I mean, you know what it's like at the move. I mean, everything comes out loose. Your brain, your nerve ends, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's like, where does this box? Well, we'll use this size. No, we won't. We'll use that size, and you get into arguments over boxes, and it's crazy. It's a lot of fun though.
Well, I myself am going to be doing a move, hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to be moving my office to another location, which is going to, so there'll be no more background noise from the busy street right in front of me, which is a good thing.
Well, we're getting a studio that's about 4 times bigger than this one.
Oh, we're moving up in the world now, aren't we?
Oh, baby. You have no idea. I mean, this is cool. I mean, people
in Winnipeg, we call you a social climber, you know.
Oh, okay. I'll take it. We have people that are already there. They're already in the community, and they say, "Can we come and watch the radio show?" Why not?
Why not?
Put it in the chairs.
Watch radio.
Put it in chairs.
In the old days.
Well, they get to see your face and my face, and they get to see how everything gets to work. People don't get to see what goes on behind the scenes, and this way they actually get to see they see the production and everything else all at the same time.
I myself have had many people ask to come into my office and they can watch some sessions and see how they operate. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of people are the most intensive people. It's like they are definitely there 100%. Plus, I'm hoping to get some that need your help.
Well, that would be wonderful. Updates. I got some updates. And in the last couple of weeks, it's been crazy here. All the new things that are coming in. With the eclipse is going to be some changes within our energy structure. And that's the introduction of a bunch of different astral bodies. It's going to affect the chakra system, our infinite now, the DNA template, our higher self. Is going to be a protection grid around us, and so on and so on. So it's going to be interesting that way. Finding a lot of information about something called nanotechnology. And our guest tonight Ken Rohla will be discussing that a little bit. Now, what I've been finding, everybody talks about nanobots and cyborgs and all these nanites, all this artificial intelligence. What I've been shown and what I found is that there's something called a bacteriophage. This is the smallest known pathogen. And if you go on the internet and you can actually see a scanning electron microscope view of what this looks like, it's got 6 legs, it's got a head, it's got a body. It looks like some kind of alien device. And what this thing does is it attaches to the bacteria within your body, attaches to the cells, and it delivers an RNA virus. So the RNA virus is called a viroid. So if you pair these two together and start getting rid of them out of somebody's body, it starts to make more changes. We're starting to go down that route. A viroid is a single-strand RNA virus with a couple of disattachments, so it's a mutated virus. And they find it a lot within potatoes, Bob, potatoes.
Ew.
If you ever go to the supermarket and you see a potato that looks weird, it has that viroid virus within it. So that's what that's all about. So we've been going down that road a lot, just clearing all that stuff out.
I like potatoes. I like potatoes till about 30 seconds ago.
Just stay away from the goofy looking ones, the ones that look like a penis or whatever, okay? Let's introduce our guest. And our guest is Ken Rohla. Now, a little bit about Ken. Ken Rohla is a natural health educator and inventor from New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and has been teaching classes and retreats since 1993 on rejuvenation and cellular regeneration using raw and sprouted vegetarian foods, herbs, food-based natural supplements, detoxification, emotional healing, reprogramming of limited unconscious beliefs, and ancient esoteric techniques and cutting-edge science. With a background in electrical engineering, physics, and computer science, for 23 years he's worked a variety of jobs in the medical industry, from the patient level to the national policy level. A cutting-edge researcher, Ken has studied with many pioneers in the natural health movement, including Gabriel Cousens, Doctors Brian and Anna Maria Clement, David Wolfe, and Robert Morse, Viktoras Kulvinskas, Brenda Cobb, and many others. Wow. Dropping a dime or what? In 2005, Ken became certified as a natural health educator by the Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. And in 2006 was honored to work with Coretta Scott King, wife of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Currently, Ken's focus is developing natural solutions for new severe threats to our health, such as nuclear radiation, geoengineering pollutants, genetically modified foods and microorganisms, electromagnetic pollution, nanotechnology, biowarfare agents, depleted food, and other issues. You may see interviews with Ken on Gaiam TV, Red Ice Radio, and elsewhere on his website, www.freshandalive.com. Please welcome, for the first time, Ken Rohla.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, welcome to A Quantum View. Here we are. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Yeah, I was very encouraged when your liaison told me about some of the topics that you discuss, particularly the reptilian influence on Earth, because I've been talking about that for years, and not many people are aware of it.
You're absolutely right, but more and more people are becoming aware of it, okay, because of people like us going out every day and flogging that concept of the reptilian stuff. Now, just today, I worked on somebody who had a lot of chronic bowel issues, Crohn's disease, and a lot of bowel pain. Moved out a whole bunch of reptilians out of that bowel, and he said he felt a lot better. What I always say, there's proof in the pudding. You get something out of the way, if things start to get better, there's got to be some validity to it. It is very much an issue, especially with their witchcraft, their way of controlling your mind, the telepathy that they use. When those thoughts come in and they're not your thoughts, where are they coming from, right? So there's definitely some influences coming from these darn green reptilians.
Precisely. Yeah, they're parasitic. Definitely. And they've been parasitic for thousands of years on Earth, feeding off of humans.
And that's what they've been doing, feeding energetically, feeding physically. So all that stuff that's happening, it's kind of like the pot is starting to boil. That's all due to these reptilians on a last-ditch effort to get as much energy as they can before they're shut off from humanity. So that's really what that's all about. It's really nothing to do with people's thoughts and beliefs. It's a lot to do with the influences by these darn reptilians.
It affects their brains.
Yeah.
Good old-fashioned divide and conquer.
I tell you, you look at money, you look at religion, you look at different colors of skin, you look at different belief systems. It's all designed to create turmoil. It's all designed to create animosity and jealousy and all that stuff. So that's where it all comes from. Now, let's get on with it, Ken. You've got a lot to talk about now, don't you?
Well, I can talk about a lot of stuff. Depends on what you want to talk about.
In your intro, we talked about all of the new types of health problems that are coming up, all the nanotechnology, the Wi-Fi, the EMFs, ELFs. Chemtrails was a real big thing for a while. It kind of died down a little bit. What are you seeing that is really, now not just conspiracy theory, but what is really causing problems within people nowadays?
Well, everything I do is based on testing, and so for me, none of it's conspiracy. It's what I'm actually seeing in people and in myself and my family. And, for many years, up until about 2012, I did individual consults publicly and, had thousands of clients over the years and have helped people with everything from cancer to Morgellons disease and everything in between. And probably about 18 years ago, I started seeing these three same heavy metals showing up in probably 85% of my clients, barium, strontium, and aluminum, which we now know show up in the chemtrails. And I knew what it was right away because I had already heard from some German sources that were analyzing what was in these metal aerosol sprays, that those three metals were in there. And so I'm a firm believer that consciousness creates reality. So rather than getting in victimhood, I started looking for solutions and ultimately found them. And so over the years, I've developed a toolbox of different things to pull these things out of our bodies, to protect us from getting them in there. And so that's really what I do for a living, is show people these solutions and ideally show them how they can do them themselves, empower themselves rather than having to spend money with me or somebody else. And so, started out with these three metals showing up in people's bodies, and then along the way, I learned about what you were talking about, these nanobacteria, these different genetically engineered, very often what the medical establishment calls superbugs, or usually genetically engineered microbes of some sort, biowarfare agents that are being used for various purposes, sometimes for agriculture and things like that. But all of this technology has gotten out of hand, and it's getting into people's bodies. It's causing all kinds of health problems. And so with the chemtrail stuff, I actually kind of bumped into solutions for it serendipitously because I had helped Chernobyl victims heal from radiation poisoning. And so I knew what was headed our way with Fukushima. So when that disaster occurred, I started looking for solutions, and I was already manufacturing some scalar energy devices, which are subtle energy devices that, in my case, they were for sleep and stress and jet lag and things like that. But I understood that technology and that type of energy can be used to heal. It can be used to modify matter and do all kinds of interesting things. So when I heard about the Fukushima disaster, the first thing in my mind was, I wonder if it was a scalar weapon that caused the earthquake that created the tsunami. And so I Googled a Fukushima scalar weapon, and one of the first things that came up was the Minister of Finance of Japan being interviewed by the editor-in-chief of Forbes China. And in that interview, he said on camera that the United States had used scalar weapons, not just with the Fukushima disaster, but also twice before, to blackmail Japan into economic policies against China to prevent the Chinese yuan Mingbing from becoming the world's reserve currency, because there's an alliance of nations called the BRICS Alliance that are working to remove the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, which is the currency that countries use to do business between them. And right now, the U.S. dollar, and particularly what we call the petrodollar, is what's being used predominantly by countries to do business. And the United States has a huge advantage with that, because we can just print dollars and go out and buy stuff, whereas other countries have to trade real resources for dollars to go buy and trade between countries. So here's the Minister of Finance of Japan saying the U.S. was trying to manipulate them with these Scalar weapons, created this earthquake that created the tsunami. And so I immediately figured, well, you can use a hammer to harm or you can use a hammer to help. So I started Googling to see if anybody was using Scalar technology to neutralize radioactivity, because in the early 90s, I had worked with free energy technology that could neutralize radioactivity. And so sure enough, I came across a lot of people that had scalar energy technologies that could clear nuclear fallout out of the atmosphere, neutralize it, and clear other pollutants out of the atmosphere. And I realized that I had the technology in my own hands that I was already manufacturing to do that. And so I spent about a year and a half experimenting and ultimately developed a device that will clear about a 75-mile radius of these pollutants, not just the chemtrail pollutants, but also nuclear fallout, but all pollution. Basically what it does is it creates a giant vortex of scalar waves. And scalar waves are really different than conventional energy. And they, as they go away from the source, they're spiraling kind of like a tornado, and they spiral in on themselves like a tornado. So they actually get stronger as they go away from their source. And so this device would create this giant vortex where the apex was out in space, and it would act like a big vacuum cleaner and pull pollution out of the atmosphere. And it didn't have any negative side effects. It didn't harm anything. It didn't modify the weather other than balancing the weather because of pulling the pollutants out of the atmosphere. And of course, when you pull the pollution out, then it's not coming down on you, but also when you clean the pollution out of the atmosphere, that balances the charge in the atmosphere, and you wind up with normal balanced weather for your area. And so I, after developing that technology, I spent a lot of time testing. Testing rainwater, testing soil, testing people and plants and animals and even microbes to see what the effects were. And so that was kind of the impetus for me to really get involved in creating solutions for specifically the geoengineering pollutants, but also radioactivity that's coming down on us from Fukushima still and other sources. And so that's kind of where my motivation was. And now we've got supplements that will pull these nanoparticles out of the body, that will pull nanobacteria out of the body, that will pull pathogens and heavy metals and toxins out of the body. And then I also teach people how to get it off their land, get it off their soil, either break it down and neutralize it, or use my technology, or build their own technologies to keep it out of the sky and keep it from coming down on them. So it's a whole lot of different solutions just for those issues. And then, there's lots of other issues like genetically modified food. There are actually ways to revert GMO DNA back to the original heirloom, because as it turns out, the genetic pattern for all living organisms is actually energetic. It's in the consciousness of the organism, and the DNA is a superconducting antenna that picks it up and brings it into the physical structures of the body. And so if you understand that, then you can use that energetic pattern to restructure and heal the DNA. And when you do that with genetically engineered crops, for example, just by feeding the crops certain minerals that are high in superconducting monoatomic minerals, it'll plug into the DNA and raise the superconductivity, and then the DNA will unwind back to the original heirloom, and your GMO plant goes away. And it's an amazing thing to see. So these are the kinds of things I've been teaching people over the years, is how to get out of victimhood, take back their power, empower themselves, and do it as affordably as possible.
Sounds like I'm talking to myself. This is all, these are all areas that I'm researching also, going to different ways, except I'm using intent to restructure the DNA and to recreate a new template. And that new template is going to be created once ascension starts going through, this eclipse happens and things change that way. So, good for you, man. You're heading down the right path, doing this thing properly. I mean, because there's a lot of people out there who will say all this stuff and talk about Scalar and try and make a buck off it, but you're actually going in and you're teaching people how to get out of harm's way now, aren't you?
Exactly. And that's one thing that impressed me about your work, is because, like working with pyramids, this is one of the things that I've been teaching people also, is how to build pyramids, very specifically what materials to use and dimensions and all those kinds of things to do these things simply. And it's just like you said, I also teach people the most powerful technology we have is our consciousness and our own biology. There's no technology that's superior to our own biology and our own consciousness, and nothing trumps a good old-fashioned intent. So when people ask me, well, what can I do? That's part of the equation. It's meditation. It's focusing on and being clear about your intent, staying out of victimhood, and creating your reality consciously, and focus. There are things like Kriya Kundalini Yoga, for example, where you can manipulate energy in the body with meditation in the mind and completely alter matter in the body and clear out nanobots or heavy metals or heal disease, all kinds of stuff. So I'm on the same page with you.
You mentioned nanobots. Heard a lot of different philosophies about the whole concept. They're in the aerosol chemtrails, they're in the food, they're this and that. Mr. and Mrs. Joe Schmo are sitting at home and they're thinking nanobots. They're thinking a little robot doing the robot dance through their body. What exactly a nanobot constructed of? What is its makeup?
Well, we have to be more concerned with nanoparticles as opposed to nanobots. Nanobots can be composed of different materials, and they're, of course, engineered in a laboratory. And I don't know of any way of identifying nanobots in the body. I don't know if, to what extent people are infected with nanobots, but nanoparticles certainly. And there are devices called quantum biofeedback devices that are scalar energy, very sophisticated scalar energy machines that you can get connected to that can actually identify these things, because all matter vibrates at the subatomic level. And so these machines can measure the frequencies of all these different elements in the periodic chart. So you can simply take a nanoparticle of whatever, and you can get a reading on it and see what its overall frequency is, and then you can identify that in the body. And I don't know if the manufacturers of some of these scalar devices now have identified nanobot technology frequency-wise. They may have, but in my area, the people I work with, they haven't. But at any rate, with the nanoparticles, these quantum biofeedback devices can identify them, because basically what they do is they measure the scalar frequency of the material or the particle or whatever, or the organism or the heavy metal, whatever it is, and they log it into a database. And then when they scan your body, if they see that frequency, then they know it's there and present in the body. So that's how I identify what's going on in someone's body. And then, I've developed different methods for dealing with that, food, supplements, pyramids, meditation, Kundalini yoga, different things, depending on what people's budget of time and money is, to get rid of this stuff.
Because pyramids are very dear to me. Let's talk a bit about your philosophy on pyramids.
Yes, what pyramids are, really, they're antennas. They're antennas that pick up this superluminal light that scientists now are calling scalar energy. It's gone by other names throughout history: chi, prana, life force, orgone, tachyon energy, torsion waves, 0-point energy, on and on and on. But basically, it's this superluminal light that's zooming out from the centers of galaxies, and it has an intelligence to it. I liken it to God consciousness, because it's by any means not conventional energy. It's traveling way beyond what we've been told is the speed of light, but it is light. and it's going so fast that it appears invisible or black to us. And so sometimes scientists will call it dark energy or dark matter or whatever. But it's this energy flowing through the cosmos, and it passes through matter like it's not even there, because it flows in between the particles of matter. You know, if you, for example, blew up a hydrogen atom to the size of a football field, the nucleus would be about the size of a golf ball, and the electron at the 100-yard line would be about the size of a pea. So there's all this space in between, but that space is not empty. It's full of this superluminal light. And so a pyramid is an antenna that can pick that up and rebroadcast it in a local area. And in the case of cones and pyramids, they also will create a vortex, a double helix vortex of this energy up through the tip. And so you can tune, because these are antennas, you can change the materials and you can change the angles and the size of the pyramids and tune them into different frequencies that have different applications. And so in the case of the pyramids that I manufacture, they're electrically powered scalar wave generators. They actually have an electronic circuit that generates the scalar energy. But then the pyramid shape itself also is an antenna for this ambient scalar energy around. And so they're much more powered than a static one. But still, a static one is very, very powerful. And so these sacred geometric proportions like the phi ratio pyramid or the pi ratio pyramid, which is what you see at the Egyptian pyramids, or there's a Russian pyramid scientist named Alexander Golod who's been building phi ratio pyramids, and then you've got another Russian pyramid scientist named Valery Uvarov who's been building pyramids and doing a lot of interesting things, and there are other people, Dr. Samir Osmanagic in the Bosnian pyramids. Mm-hmm. What they're showing is, and what my research shows, is that you can change the materials, you change the dimensions, you tune these things in, they pick up this energy, they rebroadcast it, and you can do everything from healing to clearing chemtrails or protecting yourself against electromagnetic radiation, because these scalar fields actually will structure the normally chaotic and random waves, let's say like radio and TV. You know, these waves are bouncing around us all the time, and they're passing through the body at a lot of different angles and zipping around and making a lot of noise, particularly when you get close to a strong source like, say, a cell phone or Wi-Fi. And that acts as interference for cellular communication. Your cells in your body communicate with a lot of different kinds of energy, sound energy, radio frequencies, scalar waves, electrochemical impulses. And so this EMF interferes with that. But when you immerse yourself in a scalar field of a harmonious frequency, when those random and chaotic waves hit the field, they all become parallel. Rather than bouncing around randomly and ricocheting all over the place, they become parallel. That's what's known as quantum coherence. And so when they're passing through you, they're all coming through at one angle, one direction, and it's much, much quieter to the body. So it's kind of like static on a radio station. It radically minimizes that static so the cells can hear each other and talk to each other, and it will reduce a lot of negative physical symptoms.
What I find a lot, people with EMF, ELF problems, all of the dirty energy around us given off by computers and fridges. Fridges are a big one. If you're grounded properly, this stuff will generally pass through you, and it's grounding at an energetic level also. So whenever somebody asks me, what do I do to help with EMFs, ELFs, and all that jazz, grounding is the key. And the sacred geometry component of the pyramids is a grounding type of energy. There's some other sacred geometry tools that I use at our grounding. Not just standing barefoot on the ground grounding. This is at an energetic level. So, I mean, we're talking scalar. We're talking all these different forms of energy that are very much intricate in causing all of this disruption in our brain waves and all that type of thing. So the grounding component is key. If you're grounded properly, all this stuff it's going to just kind of pass through you.
Precisely, exactly, because we're little antennas ourselves. We're scalar antennas ourselves. Our bodies are fractal antennas, And we are a part of this galactic circuit of energy that flows through the cosmos, and it comes down to us from the sun, and it comes up from the center of the earth. And, the plants on the surface of the earth are all antennas for this energy. We humans and animals, all these living organisms are antennas for this energy. And so you're absolutely right. Grounding physically and energetically is what that does is it makes you become a part of that natural circuit of energy as opposed to this man-made energy that is disharmonious to living organisms. So you're spot on.
If we look back a couple hundred years, there wasn't a lot of this technology stuff that was getting in our way. The Gwen towers, the cell phone towers, all these different communication devices. So it has become, let's say, the new health problem is all of this communication stuff. We've seen a lot of different gadgets, let's say. I mean, to put on your cell phone, a shungite patch or some kind of EMF, ELF blocking patch. Do these things, to you, do they have any relevance at all?
They do, and there are a lot of good ones out on the market, and I can tell you how they work too. Shungite in particular, there are several different technologies for this kind of EMF protection. But take shungite for example. It's a natural stone that comes from Russia, in a very specific source in a mine, and there's only one location. Well, there's one location in Russia, and there's a location in Pakistan for this stone. But it's a stone that first of all, is very high in graphene, which is has a lot of really interesting properties, and it acts like a crystalline antenna for the scalar energy that picks it up and rebroadcasts it, just like a pyramid does. And so at the molecular level of this stuff, you've got all these little antennas picking up the scalar energy and rebroadcasting it just like a pyramid. And then within this stone, and within all stone, particularly certain stones are higher than others, you've got these monoatomic minerals. Some people call them ormus elements or other names for them, but basically these really weird multidimensional elements that are not conventional matter. They are multidimensional matter, meaning that on the one hand, they all appear as white ceramic powders in their physical form, but they are simultaneously existing in other dimensions or frequencies of time and space. So they connect all these different frequencies of space-time together, non-physical reality with physical reality, if you want to look at it that way. And they're in our bodies. They're very high in shungite. They're very high in certain minerals, and so when you have these minerals in a high concentration, or a stone like shungite, they will put out a scalar field, and their molecular structure, or what's called their crystalline lattice, in these particular forms, they are harmonious to living organisms, and so they will put out a scalar field that will structure this EMF and have the same benefit as, say, a powered field like my rest shield would. So that's one technology. You can use natural stones to do that. And sometimes you'll see some of these EMF pendants made out of stones that are high in these monoatomics, and they're also donut shaped. And the toroidal shape also is an antenna like a pyramid and can pick up this energy and rebroadcast it. So sometimes you'll see shungite pendants in a donut or a toroid shape. Then also, a lot of these EMF products are simply some type of material like a resin or a laminate that contains quartz nanocrystals in them. And it's been discovered that if you either powder or create in a laboratory nanoscale quartz crystals, they are so small that they can actually pick up these scalar waves just like a pyramid will and rebroadcast them. And so a lot of these EMF products are some kind of material that's containing quartz nanocrystals. And so it's one of the things I teach people how to do is you can buy shungite powder online, you can buy quartz nano powder online, and mix them together in a resin to make your own pendants. Or just, carry a piece of shungite with you or put it around you. And then there's another way of doing these EMF products by taking any material, any kind of matter. It could be glass, wood, plastic, rubber, it doesn't matter, metal. and you bombard it with scalar waves in a way that alters the geometry of the nucleus or the nuclei of the atoms of that material. Because normally if you look at, let's say, molecular and atomic models of the elements, and you look at the protons and neutrons and the different particles inside the nucleus, well, first of all, that whole model is erroneous, but there is a geometry to the nucleus of atoms. And it turns out that with certain elements, you can change the geometry of those subatomic structures, and they will become a nano antenna for the scalar energy that's around us and rebroadcast it. So, for example, we sell an EMF pendant on my website that's made out of a nut from South America called tagua, and it's been bombarded with this scalar energy to alter the atomic structure and the geometry, and then that nut will broadcast a scalar field that will protect against EMF. So those are the main EMF technologies that you see out on the market these days.
Well, what I'm loving here, Ken, is that you're taking the philosophy, which is a basic spiritual background to things, and you're putting a really big scientific spin on it so that people can wrap their heads on it.
Exactly. And, and that's the thing, too. When you start talking about these types of concepts and ideas and technologies, mainstream science, of course, is going to poo-poo it. And coming from a background of electrical engineering, when I was fresh out of school, I was told about some of this stuff, and I thought it was nonsense as well until I started seeing applications that I couldn't explain that actually worked and had measurable, demonstrable results. And so that's why, coming from that background and hearing that criticism of, oh, this is all, new age nonsense. No, if it's legit, then there are always going to be cutting edge scientists who have done the work to show what's going on. And so I find those people who are very often Nobel Prize winners, or sometimes they're military scientists or people working for the NSA who know about this stuff and they've done the science. And so I can refer people to that. And that's a big part of what I do in my presentations and online, is showing people, no, this is not nonsense. It's not new age. This is heavy duty physics, and there are people proving this.
This is who and what we are, really. It's taking that whole component of our essence and putting science to it and saying, look, this is how we exist. This is the molecule, the atom, the structure of all the quarks and everything within it has got sacred geometry, has got scalar energy, as this is why we live. Why do we all of a sudden hit a certain age, like say 85 or 90, and we get weaker? Telomere activity happening. You've got restructuring and breakdown of all of the cells and the nuclei within it, caused nowadays by all this bad food, by all this geoengineering, by all these radio waves and all of these different pollutants that are within our body.
Absolutely. And it's not just an evolution of technology that's causing it. There is an agenda for population reduction to accelerate the death rate on this planet, and it's working. I subscribe to financial newsletters that give investment advice based on demographics, and they're stating, and they have for years, that for the first time in recorded human history, the death rate and the birth rate on Earth are about equal now, and the death rate is expected to exceed the birth rate in coming years. And so, because of that, they're recommending against certain kinds of investments. But when you look at that and you look at these programs, sometimes covert, but sometimes not, you've got to ask yourself, is this an agenda to reduce population? I mean, I used to give out in my workshops a handout from the United Nations where they did a study about overpopulation. When I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, overpopulation was talked about quite a lot. We were taught about it in school, even in elementary school. And what are we going to do about it? And nobody talks about it anymore. And it's because, they've decided, well, talk isn't going to get us anywhere. Let's just start killing people off through this increased mortality rates. But the United Nations report itself said, well, we don't really need to worry too much about overpopulation because populations will naturally die off through starvation and disease and this kind of stuff. And I was really surprised to see a UN report saying that. It's like, oh, we're not really worried too much about overpopulation anymore.
That all boils down to a reptilian agenda. It's
Precisely.
It's a harvesting, taking advantage of a certain period of time where they can harvest certain things and go after all that energy that they're after. That's what it really boils down to. And anybody who is a high-level politician, the Illuminati, the elite of the world, anybody in a very powerful position is very much reptilian controlled. So they're going to be following all this directive given by thought from the reptilians to do certain things. And if you look at scalar weapon attacks, if you look at HARP attacks, chemtrails, it's all there for one thing, and that's to create trouble, to create loss of lives, to create a need to pour money into something so that somebody else can be empowered. It's all really one big power trip.
It is, and I'm glad you mentioned that about the reptilians, because I've actually encountered reptilians in the physical, and I've had exposure, fortunately benevolent ones. They're not all evil, but that's precisely it. What I've been told, and now there are actually secret space program insiders and whistleblowers who are coming out and saying the same thing and talking about this, that these reptilians have, first of all, mind controlled the human population for millennia. For their own purposes, basically creating like a farm here on Earth that they can feed off of. Originally, physically feed off of us, as well as other things like harvesting gold for various purposes to create these monoatomics, but also to feed off of us energetically, because human consciousness and emotion is a form of scalar energy, and it's a very, very powerful and potent form. And these reptilians who, operate outside of physical 3D reality a lot, they can feed off of that. It's easier for them to feed off of that than to physically corral and harvest us, as they have done in the past. And so that's a big part of what we're seeing going on this planet. But also, one of the things I was shown by these reptilians was the reason that these reptilians are the way they are, with no compassion and no love and empathy and that kind of thing, is because of their birthing process. They, in their society, just kind of like reptiles here on Earth, like snakes and lizards and things, they evolved with a birthing process where when a reptilian couple has fertilized eggs, they send them to a communal nursery, like a government-run nursery, and they're hatched there, and they never meet their parents, and they are given minimal sustenance, and they have to compete and fight to survive. So only the strongest ones survive to make it to adulthood. And so that's where this whole concept of competition and scarcity and survival of the fittest, all that nonsense comes from, that reptilian psyche that's developed from their birthing process. And these particular reptilians that were working with some other extraterrestrials that I encountered, they were aware of the bigger picture and understood that fundamental process, that birthing process and other fundamentals in the reptilian society, has to be changed, or they will implode over time. They will cease to exist. And so that's part of what this drama being acted out, not just on Earth, but galactically, is going on, is that these reptilians cause a lot of trouble around the galaxy, from what I'm told, and they are evolving just like we are.
Let me bounce this off your head. Now, I'm always coming up with different concepts, trying to figure out what's going on here within any specific person with their health problem and the things they're going through. Is that one thing that was brought to me from dowsing is that at one point in our existence, a lot of humans here on Earth were a Draco reptilian. There was a shift in the universe that happened that allowed us to reincarnate here on Earth to participate in the ascension process, to become a higher conscious being, to get out of that terrible upbringing, all of that control, all of that stuff that the reptilians go through.
Yeah, I would say that aligns with what I've been shown and told, that we were engineered and manipulated, our genetics were manipulated by reptilian geneticists way back, and that in order to control us, and that what scientists call junk DNA is actually parts of the DNA that these reptilians unplugged so that we couldn't become more powerful than them. But because of the transition of the Earth going through the cosmos and then different energetic bands and areas, that energy, that God consciousness flowing through the cosmos has unwound that. And so we are waking up and becoming more aware and more sentient, and we are claiming our power and changing all of that. And our DNA is changing, et cetera, et cetera. So that jives with what I've seen and been told.
Yeah, I bumped into a lot of people who had their awakening, and it's like, oh my gosh. You notice I didn't say, oh my God, oh my gosh. Okay. There's how many different gods out there? The God of thunder, God of rock and roll, God of pizza. There's so many different demigods. I always term it, oh my gosh. Anyway, so people are getting their awakenings and realizing, where have I been all my life? What have I been doing? Holy caramba, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, exactly. I used to work in the medical system for 23 years, and 20 years ago when I was in there, and I would come back from doing a 7 or 10 day cleanse or something, and come to work, and these people say, what have you been doing? And I say, well, I was doing a colon cleanse and this and that, the other, and they would all laugh at me. And then years later, when they all started coming down with cancer and stuff, they'd call me up and want to know what it was all about. And then a lot of them jumped on the bandwagon and thought they invented it. So we're definitely seeing, a huge shift in consciousness with people. And this is why I've always been optimistic, because it's kind of like a jet taking off on a runway. When you're sitting there still and you put the throttles on, at first the engines are blasting full bore and you're hardly moving along. But as you get going and you pick up more and more speed, it becomes easier and easier until you take off, and then you get up to cruising speed, and it doesn't take as much thrust to keep things flying. And that's what I see going on with consciousness, that increasingly, because of the energies coming to the planet, it's forcing people to either wake up or perish. And that's exactly what's going on. It's kind of like the old biblical parting of the ways. People are dropping like flies. I get emails from my high school alumni association. I'm 56 years old. And man, people my age that grew up with me are just dying every week. Mm-hmm. And these are the people who don't change. They're eating the same foods that they ate when they were kids. They're living the same way. They're trying to hang on to the old paradigm. And those are the people that are dying off. But a lot of people are, becoming uncomfortable and shifting because of this energy coming on.
What I see a lot with the people who haven't awakened, or let's say just basically refuse to take a look, is if they don't have at least 1 or 2 pills from the medical profession within their diet, there's something wrong. It's like everybody's brainwashed out. If you're not taking a pill, well, there's got to be something wrong with you. If you're not wearing glasses, well, you should get your eyes checked, because everybody should be wearing glasses, because nobody has good vision anymore.
Right. I mean, according to, I believe it's the AMA's own information, 70% of Americans are on at least one pharmaceutical. So that tells you we have a mind-controlled drug culture in the United States and pretty much around the world. And, people are figuring out, hey, this stuff doesn't work. It just suppresses symptoms. And the people that are trying to hang on to that are suffering immensely. And so, my message has always been to be progressive and pursue happiness and health, and avoid getting those lessons through painful means. Because basically, when you're suffering, it's the universe smacking you upside the head trying to tell you, hey, you got to change. And ultimately, most people just grin and bear it until the pain becomes too great.
In about a year's time in Canada, marijuana is going to be legalized. What are your views on CBD oil?
Well, I have used and tested a bunch of different CBD oils and the whole plant. And for people who are not familiar with that, what we're talking about is basically medical marijuana that has been hybridized so that it has below 0.3% THC in it. THC is the chemical that gets you high.
So you're not getting high in the munchies and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you when you do that, if you hybridize it and get the THC below 0.3%, then it's legally classified in the United States as industrial hemp. So it was actually in 2014 that the industrial hemp industry got a law passed in the United States indicating that. And so the medical marijuana people looked at that and said, hey, well, let's try and hybridize this and do the same thing and jack up the CBD. So that's what they did. They hybridized to get the CBD up to around 20-25% and almost no or zero THC in the plant. And then that opened the floodgates for people creating all of these hemp products, including the CBD oils. I used a bunch of them. Some of them are fantastic. But then I came across a product called hemp paste. And for folks that want to take a look at it, you can go to hemppaste.com or mynutraceuticals.com. And I have no financial interest in them. But the whole plant, what they do is they just take the whole plant and they powder it and they put it in coconut oil. And that, in my experience and in testing, and also in independent laboratory testing, has shown that the whole plant is much stronger than the extracts. Not that there aren't some great extracts out there, but so I've been using the whole plant for probably almost a year now, and it's phenomenal. And I can understand why the medical industry is lobbying hard to keep it out of the public's hands, because it's a heal-all. I mean, it's easier to list the things it doesn't heal than what it does. I mean, it's it's insane. Cancer. I mean, Tommy Chong healed himself with diet and hemp. I've found, I eat a lot of live food and I detox and take care of myself. And I've just found that it just makes everything easier, and I'm much more relaxed and calm. I sleep better. Just all these little things I don't see them with this stuff. But I've also had people, for example, children with autism that have used it, that have had phenomenal improvements in behavior and cognition. I've had people with heart problems, like serious heart problems, that went away taking CBD. There's just a huge litany of things that it helps. And so I'm a big, big fan of it.
What I find is that it helps a lot with the inflammation in your body. And, if you look at everything around us, all of the energies, all of the different garbage in the foods, it all creates an inflammation. And the CBD oil, I know some people who take it who say if they didn't have this, they wouldn't be able to make it through the day without taking a morphine or something like that.
Exactly. And, what doctors call inflammation is actually it's accumulation of acid in the body and tissue. And the acid comes from eating a toxic, unnatural diet, not just GMOs and not just chemical-laden food and all that, but just cooked food. We're the only organism on this planet that eats its food cooked. And you can get away with maybe about 20% of your diet being cooked. But once you get above that, the body can't neutralize that much acid being formed by cooked food in the body. And so that creates this inflammation. So just by switching to a predominantly live food diet goes a long way towards removing that inflammation. Then if you add the CBD in there, that's exactly it. Hemp, marijuana, cannabis is extremely alkalizing to the body. That's one of the reasons why people who smoke pot feel better. It's because it actually alkalizes the body. And so that's exactly right. It really helps neutralize that acid and inflammation. Interestingly enough, too, you mentioned aspartame. When I was in undergraduate school at Arizona State University back in the 80s, G.D. Searle was working with Arizona State doing research on aspartame before they brought it to market. And it was known then how toxic it was. I mean, it was actually, I think, originally developed as a pesticide, I think. And there were huge protests on campus over it because it had gotten out of how toxic it was. And, of course, despite the protests, the university and Searle brought it to market because it was a multi-billion-dollar product. But it's most definitely, it's one of the major topics of complaint at the FDA is aspartame-related issues.
Exactly. Now, we only got a couple minutes left. Ken, how can people contact you?
You can reach me through my website at freshandalive.com, and spelled out A-N-D. Also, I have a blog where I've got a lot of information and videos and things like that. That's freshandaliveblog.com. And I'm also on YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel. If you just search on Ken Rohla, Rohla, or Fresh and Alive, you can see that. Or my website has links to it. And I'm on Facebook, and I also do a lot of online events and interviews and things. So if people get on my mailing list, they'll be informed of when and where I'm going to be.
That's awesome, Ken. Our guest tonight on A Quantum View has been Ken Rohla. Ken, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for validating a lot of the crazy stuff that I work with, and we're looking forward to having you back on again very soon.
Likewise, Chris, my pleasure. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing and talking about what you're talking about.
That's what it's going to take, is people like us getting out there and educating, talking about it, The more you talk about it, the more people are going to listen. They hear it 8 times and they turn away. They hear it the 10th time, they start to listen. So here we are, we're doing that, and we're going to make the world a better place. This is Chris Kehler. We are out of here.